Hello, welcome. I hope you stick around and join me on this journey as I create a magical world or fantasy world, whatever you want to call it. I'm creating something that I love. And, it's the beginning of Halloween month, October. I refer to it as Halloween month because what else is October iconic for? Let's be real. Unless you're into drinking in Oktoberfest, it's Halloween. I love Halloween. So, and like a fantasy world, it's full of witches. Well, I don't call them witches in my fantasy world because that's kind of a slur there, but we'll get into that maybe. I don't know. I don't want to give too much away because this is something I actually want to turn into a book, but we'll see. You'll see in the background that I am creating the protagonist of my story, not revealing the name, but I love her very dearly. She is dear to my heart. So, I'm very excited to share with you. I'm going like completely off script with this one, so bear with me. I might be a little scatterbrained because that is my default state, scatterbrained. So this little story idea actually started with a Harry Potter fanfiction. And the original premise of the fanfiction didn't even end up being what I was writing. The original premise was going to be have the actual family alive, and it was going to be a young boy. That was the premise. And this girl right here, she was going to be a background character, the protagonist's older sister. That did not end up happening. I decided I wanted trauma, so I killed off the family. And then I killed them off before the younger brother would have been born and made the older sister my protagonist and the same age as the Harry Potter characters. And I had so much fun because they were, in that phase, essentially a Tom Riddle. And I love young Tom Riddle. There's just something very fun about that type of character. The religious trauma, I don't know, just something about it spoke to me. So I gave her a lot of that. In the original rendition, she is very vindictive, jealous, and keeps all of her cards close to her chest, but will play other people like a fiddle. Because why not? She grew up in an orphanage. She didn't have much. She really didn't, so she's just out here taking what she thinks belongs to her. That was in the fanfiction, but she's evolved past that. She's no longer just a fanfiction character. I decided, you know what, I'm having so much fun writing her. I want to give her her own story. So I did. And I decided I'm making a whole ass fantasy realm. So I am. It's it's fun but difficult because there's so many very popular fantasy books out there. You don't want to accidentally copy them because that's not good. It's just not good. And also, I also want to move away from the Harry Potter because J.K. Rowling, not the best. We're being honest, not the best. And also the books, very they have their charm, they have their place, but they're not the best. They're not the best written books. I maybe it's the open-endedness of everything that is both what entices people because you can create your own story in this very open world because the world building is not the most fleshed out, but what's there is enough for you to build off of completely. I think that was the allure of it in a way. I am going the complete opposite direction and am world building far too much. Like, I have a problem, but it's fun, so I don't care. I really don't. In this fantasy realm that I have created, magical society broke off from the world that we know around 1600s, right when the European witch trials were like really hitting home. It was an issue, not a very bright space in history in general, just lots of death in that era. And I figured that would be the perfect time for some nice, clean breakup. So there was a big ritual, and then they create an entire new dimension, realm, pocket universe, whatever you want to call it. They create one. A big group of 50 founding families creates this realm to be a safe haven for all magicals. Well, the 50 founding families, at least, because that is all the magicals they were able to round up in this medieval era. Because, it's the medieval era. What are you gonna do? Send out a pigeon? That pigeon's probably gonna die before they reach everyone, or just die from disease or getting shot at for food. So, there was really nothing that could be done in that era to reach out and grab a whole ton of people that would be magical. So, we've got the 50 founding families, and that is it. I don't want to reveal too much about anything else of the founding of the realm, the universe, because I'm gonna keep that private. It's for the book. A book that may or may not ever be finished writing, because I'm bad. I'm really, really bad at that. I'm working on it, though. I'm working on it. This has been in the works. Well, the fan fiction I originally started writing in high school. Well, even before that, before I wrote fan fiction, I really enjoyed making family trees, like Harry Potter wizarding family trees, because I could do some fun things with that. The Black family in Harry Potter is a very good example of how much fun you can have. I like making fucked up scenarios and drama way too much, so there is unfortunately incest in a lot of the family trees I made for the Harry Potter universe. So I made like 4 or 5 family trees of different families that I imagined could be like pureblood families in Harry Potter, and one of those was family I used to do a fan fiction about a year later, middle of high school that I started it, and then the actual book I started in my last year of high school. I've done a good amount of world building, but the actual writing process, I've just barely introduced the realm. Since this realm was founded by 50 families, the original governance for it, since they didn't need much, was just a simple hereditary oligarchy. Each family would bring one representative from their family to represent its interests, and then it would just be that one small group of 50 people that would decide, the rules, the laws, the structure of this realm that they were building. Very simple. It didn't need to be more than that. It worked out for everyone. And then the families got bigger. It still wasn't too much of an issue because it was still pretty much all in the family, but into the realm's creation, they decided, you know what, we should really go back and make sure we don't have any other magical ancestors left out in the world that is just non-magical. So about, 150 years later, they go back out into the actual real world and are like, we come to us, magical children, we are dragging you into our realm. And that's kind of what happened. And as these newcomers, what I'm calling them, grow up, they don't belong to one of these 50 families, so there's no place in them in the government, and also the population is growing larger and larger, and they need more governance. So you have this original council that is a hereditary oligarchy of the original 50 founding families, but other sectors of the governance are now democratic, you would say, as in the voted officials from other people, everyone in the realm decides who fills these positions, and this gives people who are not, promoting one of the founding families and of the newcomers to have a say in the governance. But this also creates issues as time goes on, because there's going to be a divide. Obviously, there needs to be drama, there needs to be war, there needs to be conflict. But also, with the hereditary oligarchy, that is the main council of all the governments. So that is the one that has the most power. So obviously, there's tension there with that aspect. And with that tension, there's going to be even more drama, conflict, war. I love it, So, the hereditary oligarchies, a representative from each of the founding families, but sometimes family lines don't always continue, and that becomes an issue. Because if a family line dies out, what do you do with that seat? There's no longer a representative coming in to fill it. So you have this empty seat, and that doesn't work. So now, in the most powerful council, they're like, what do we do? And they're like, we'll vote people in. That is, you see where I'm going. You see how that causes some issues there. So, by the time that the protagonist comes in, there has already been a minor scuffle over these voted seats in the most powerful council in the government. And that's not good. That is kind of a big part of the protagonist's backstory is the conflict between the newcomers, the founding families, and these council seats. I hope you're picking up what I'm laying down. I think it's pretty obvious where this is going, but I love the idea of it so much. I haven't really been talking about my character that's been being created on screen for you, but yeah, you can see that I'm going to talk about her now, just so you know. I'm done spoiling the story. I'm talking about my character. I wanted her to be very lovely, but also with a bit of a dark charm to her. So I'm imagining Morticia Addams. She is Morticia Addams, essentially, in terms of beauty. Lovely, elegant, but there's also like little hints and quirks in her features that are a bit darker. They add a bit of a uniqueness, a strangeness to her. And you see where I added makeup to me? That's not actually makeup. This character doesn't wear makeup at all. They were raised very strictly because also this whole story takes place in the past. So she was born in the 1930s. So, and raised in a Catholic orphanage. So you can imagine that. You can imagine just she doesn't really wear makeup, doesn't have any piercings. So the makeup that I did put on her is actually how I imagine her normal features to look like. Very naturally dark lips, very pale, very deep sunk eyes that have a bit of a darker color around them, and very bright ice blue eyes. Very bright, really bright. And I love making eerie-esque characters. I love it. So there were a lot of hairs that I was considering because I wanted it to be long, black, wispy curls, but also I wanted her to have a prominent widow's peak. That is a part of her character, and this is pretty much the only hair, the werewolf's hair, that had that widow's peak. It's not my favorite for her, but I felt she needed the widow's peak because it's a very big part of her overall vibe. Very sharp, angular features, very long, skinny face, and it's the same with her body. I imagine her to be very tall, about 5'10", so very tall for a woman. And also, you see this hat here from Life and Death. I never noticed that snake charm on it. Oh my god, so beautiful. Back to her, though. She has a very svelte figure, so skinny, tiny, but tall. So model-like, but it's also kind of partly due to being underfed, malnourished as a child, because 1930s, you got the Great Depression rolling right into a war. The rationing was severe. So, yeah, there's also that part of her character. That's also part why I wanted to make the story based in the 1930s, because I can add so much trauma. I love trauma. I love making traumatized characters a little too much, but it's a very easy way to add depth. So that is kind of her physical attributes. Personality-wise, she is a borderline sociopath / high-functioning sociopath. She doesn't really have empathy for anyone. Blame it on the trauma when her family died, or from growing up in an orphanage, religious trauma. She went through exorcisms because her magical abilities showed up. And yeah, in the 1930s, they were still a little on that crap, I think. So she went through multiple exorcisms from very young as a child. So that definitely does not help. And even when she got to a point where she could kind of control the magical ability, the stigma still kind of latched onto her all throughout her childhood, being raised in that very religious environment. That stigma stayed with her. The orphanage caretakers, nuns, still weren't very nice. The other girls very much so ignored her. So, very not fun. I tried to match the traits in game as much as I could for her, so I gave her the spellcraft and sorcery aspiration from realm of magic, because she goes into this magical realm and she very much so wants to adapt to it. She wants to make it entirely herself because of the religious trauma. She wants to distance herself as far away from that. It made her ambitious because she very much so wants to become the best. She wants to prove her greatness, that she's better than what she came from, that everyone was wrong for looking down on her, and also just bring her family name back to glory. And then Macabre. Do I need to explain more? This whole thing is like a mixture of Willy Wonka and Willy Wonka, the Addams Family, and Harry Potter. Of course, she's going to be Macabre. And then the final trait that I gave her was evil, because sometimes I hesitate to call her evil, but she's definitely evil. And I even gave her likes and dislikes. I never do that, but since this is a character of my own that I have fleshed out, I felt very comfortable doing the likes and dislikes. There were a lot of other traits that I really wanted to add, like I think it was the practice makes perfect one, where they gain the skills very fast, or maybe it's not practice makes perfect, it's the overachiever. I think that makes them gain skills very fast, because I imagine her to be one that is able to adapt and learn very quickly. She is very naturally intelligent. She never really had to work for her intelligence, but she puts in a lot of hard work anyways. She's very smart. She's very determined to gain all the knowledge she can, again, wanting to be the best. And then there was also a lot of other traits that, like jealous. Jealous works very well for her because she's a very jealous individual. She's very dark. She does not have a lot of redeeming qualities, but I love her anyway because of her backstory and all of her reasonings for all these horrible qualities. And I'm not going to fix any of them, because why would I? They make her so fun. Sometimes it's just fun to write an excuse me, that I stumbled a bit there, unapologetically bad character. And I love writing unapologetically bad characters. I just cannot get that word out. I'm sorry. Unapologetically bad characters that have sympathetic backstories. And you'll see I just gave her a randomized name. What was it? Marcella Buchanan or something? Whatever. I am not putting her up on the gallery. She's very near and dear to me, my personal character. This is kind of going to be a reference for me to do future drawings for her and other such things, but I just needed to give her a name to be able to save it. That's not her real name. I'm not sharing that because I want to keep some parts of the story private. I want to, just have something for myself to work on and not spoil something if I do ever try to get this published. I have had a lot of fun with this. I'm very passionate about this. If you want more videos on this fantasy world, you have to let me know down in the comments. If not, I guess I'll just keep it private, but I have lots more characters that I've made, lots more world building that I'd like to share, and also give your feedback on what you think of the story that I've been kind of adapting so far with the details I've given. I'd really appreciate it. So, comment, I really appreciate it. It makes my day. And subscribe so that I can prove to my mother I have friends. I was a very lonely child. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.